We demystify what goes on behind the therapy room door. Join us on this voyage of discovery and co-creative conversations. This is the Therapy Show, Behind Closed Doors podcast.
With Bob Cooke
and Kellie Barratt.
Hello and welcome to the Therapy Show Behind Closed Doors. I'm Kellie Barratt and I'm here with the wonderful Mr. Bob Cooke. Hello, Bob.
Hello, hello, hello.
How are you?
I was just saying, I've got a bit of a cold, so if I sound a bit snuffly or something like that, that's the reason why.
Yes, yeah. Well,
but we were just saying we'll see how it goes, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we'll get through a whole episode.
Yeah.
Because our title today is Educative Therapy. Is it an important part of the therapy process? We're on episode number 223.
Okay, it's often called psychosocial part of therapy, where the psych and social meet. I call it educative therapy, really.
Yeah.
It's up to you what the viewers or the listeners want to, which word they used to. I'm going to use educative therapy because, well, I've always used it. I think it's very important, actually. So, I mean, I know psychoanalysts, for example, going back in the day, who used interpretation and free association, wouldn't dream of doing it. Educative therapy or psychosocial information. I like it, though, because it provides some grounding and understanding to psychological processes, which clients can find very useful. I don't always do it, by the way, but for some clients, they like the information. As I say, it provides an understanding of very difficult concepts.
So when you say educative therapy, are you talking about that you explain a concept to the client about what is happening in their process?
Correct. So both you and I trained in TA, transaction analysis.
Yeah.
Created by Eric Byrne in the early 60s. Yeah. He did a lot of this, by the way, I think. And it's explaining ego states, or you might explain games, script, or transactions, but often ego states particularly helps people understand their psychological processes. And one of the real gifts of transaction analysis is that it's a very accessible language.
Yeah.
And people understand very quickly ego states, for example.
Yeah.
And so clients, on the whole, when I've done that for whatever clinical reasons, they find it very important.
Yeah, I agree. I do some basic concept stuff, but I don't make it very complicated. I don't always keep referring to it, but I do find it useful, and I find that clients like it.
Yeah, if you're talking about the use simple language for concepts, it's the same as me. I don't start talking about advanced transaction analysis like structural analysis or game analysis or things like that. Particularly, whatever I do, I'll keep it simple, and it will be in the service of the client.
Yes, it has to have a purpose. There's no point in just starting with it, and there's no need to be adding it in. Absolutely. It's useful for the client at the time.
I think ego states, particularly when we start explaining parent part of themselves, the adult part of themselves, and the child part of themselves, which gives them a sort of understanding of the unconscious process of the younger self, they find it extraordinarily useful.
Yeah. And to help, I think clients like or find it useful when they realise that separate out from themselves, so they recognise that the thoughts that they're having aren't necessarily all of theirs. They might have interjected the parent, so it helps to separate out from that when they realise.
Yeah, and in TA they have a course called the TA 101, which I often used to send my clients on.
Oh, right.
As a way of understanding some of the processes behind not just my thinking, but gives them an accessible language to understand themselves. I mean, the TA 101 is very powerful, I think. And I've just had some friends of mine who've gone on the recent one. and she was saying how profound it was, particularly about ego states and
Mm,
the idea that the past affects the present.
mm. Yeah.
And it had given her a chance to reevaluate some of her perspectives from her younger age,
Yeah.
which then starts to free her.
Mm, mm,
So I think it's extraordinarily important, and not for everybody. So, for example, somebody who has I don't know, uses intellectualization as a major defense,
mm.
then I'd think twice about.
Yes. Yes. Avoid theory at all costs. Yeah. Yeah.
So I think I well, as I said earlier in this podcast, it would be with clinical thought, not
Yeah.
just, oh, well, I think we'll talk about the script today, for example.
Yes, yes. And I wonder if maybe new therapists might move into a bit of explaining theory when they get a bit stuck or a bit lost, perhaps, or, certainly if the client's projecting a lot of anger onto us, that can be a bit tricky. And I wonder if newer therapists might move into explaining what's happening as a bit of a safety mechanism for themselves.
Yes, that's a good point. One of my maximums, if that's the right word, that I think about a lot, and that is that the process of the psychotherapy
Mm.
treatment, if you like,
Yeah.
is as important as the content.
Yes.
So what you're saying there reminds me of that sort of
Mm.
belief system of mine,
Yeah.
that if you get caught up with the cognitive intellectualization of some of this stuff,
Mm.
rather than looking at the process, what's happening between yourself and the other person,
Mm.
um, it might not be useful.
Well, it's a way of moving away from the client.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
And it could be seen as moving out of contact with the client.
Yeah. And it could put us into the one-up position, like we're the expert, or certainly into a teacher or parent transference.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because Eric Byrne, when he left psychoanalysis, because he was very into psychoanalysis, and he wrote a book in 1947. I think it was called An Outline of Psychiatry or something like that. I can't
Mm.
remember the exact title, so have to forgive me. But he was very much he liked Freudian analysis.
Mm.
His analyst actually was Paul Verdern. So he's very much of that ilk.
Mm.
I don't know you hear rumors, so I'm not quite sure of how he fell out of love with psychoanalysis. Lots of people say different things, like he tried to join the New York Psychoanalytical Training Institute, and they said he needed to do more of his own therapy and things like that. So I'm not quite sure what took him away. I know in his first book, or one of the books anyway, he talked about why he created transaction analysis, and that was that he wanted a quicker method, if you like, for cure
Mm.
than many, many, many years in psychoanalysis looking at the child or
Mm.
the first 3 or 4 years of life.
Mm.
He thought there was a quicker way
Mhm.
to help people get better.
Yeah.
That was one of his reasons
Mm.
behind developing, I think. But going on, so I'm not sure what book this is in, but I think it's in Principles of Group Treatment
Uh-huh.
when he talks about, and I think it's the only book, I think it's chapter 11, where he talks about how to do transaction analysis. I'm not talking about the theory, I'm
Mm.
talking about the method,
Mm.
even to the extent of talking about getting a whiteboard and that you need to go up and write on the whiteboard at least 3 times, and then you're a transaction analyst, things like that. So that was where he talked about how to do it. And the only book that I'd think of in his 5 or 6 books, by the way. And I think it's in that book that he talks about the importance of psychosocial information and what I call educative therapy,
Mm.
for the reasons you and I have just given.
Yeah.
And I don't think in that book, I'm absolutely certain, he doesn't talk about the disadvantages. Because the disadvantage you just talk about, I think is really important, to look at the process, because the
Mm.
process is important to the content.
But I suppose for some clients, they kind of want they want the information, don't they? Because they want to learn and they want to know. And I mean, I give them the simple things like the drama triangle or the ego state, and because it's something that they can practice outside of the session. They can be, observing ego states in other people or themselves or the drama triangle. So it's kind of, it's like we've got a little bit of homework to do in between the sessions.
Mm,
But not
mm.
everybody, not all therapists will work like that, I imagine.
No, but I really like it because especially the understanding of transaction analysis proper.
Mm,
In other words, uh, an understanding when they were in child ego state and
mm,
what they might seduce or hook in the other person, which would
yes.
be perhaps a critical parent, things like that.
Mm,
And that they really liked and gave them an understanding of some of their unconscious behaviors.
mm. Yeah. Yes.
And you're right, not everybody does do psycho, but I was, before this podcast, when was it? 2 or 3 days ago, I was talking to people in the Wellbeing Centre and the Institute about how many of them do educative therapy or psychosocial information, and everyone said they did
Oh,
to
yeah.
less or more extent.
Mm,
Right, but I really agree with what you're saying, which is that it needs to be for the benefit of the client.
yeah.
And I think the process is just as important as the content.
Mm. And even though we explain a concept, that doesn't necessarily mean that it will make any difference to the client, because that might not induce behavior change. They might understand it cognitively, but they might not make any changes just because they
Uh,
understand the concept.
yeah, actually, I think you're most likely correct.
Mm,
Is they understand it maybe at a cognitive level, but there isn't necessarily integration.
mm. And I think nothing beats the client finding their own answers. So,
No, you don't want to deny them the opportunity to get to their own truth.
mm,
And I was just thinking of my friend who went to the 101 and said how insightful that information about how the past affects the present and different perspectives was. So you're right, it's horses for courses.
mm,
It was interesting that all therapists I talked to
mm,
had all taught ego states.
mm. Well, it's hard to talk TA and not talk to ego state. So unless the client doesn't understand it, and they would be in the dark, I guess. But I suppose I wonder if we're explaining the concept, does that mean that we're moving out of the analysis part or being analysts?
The bit you're talking about was again what Eric Byrne talked about. Again, interestingly, before that what is it? Principle group treatment book.
Mm,
I think in an earlier book, when he was talking about, I think his transaction analysis book in 1961, he was talking about, forgive me if it's not that book, but he was talking about the dangers of clients going away and playing what he called G professor or this expert stance
yeah.
because they knew information. And clients, especially in couples work, often talk about, oh, well, he knows some information that he uses against me and things like that because he
Mm,
becomes the expert. So I think that's a real important consideration to
mm,
take
mm,
into what you just said
mm,
in your choice in sharing educative therapy.
yeah. And I think it's really useful, or it's really vital to choose which client we do it with and when. So if a client's very disturbed or quite fragmented, I don't think it would be useful at all.
Well, that's an interesting one.
Mm.
That's really interesting because I'm referring to Eric Byrne a lot in this podcast.
Yeah.
Well, perhaps that's quite but he worked in Carmel Psychiatric Hospital
Mm.
as a psychiatrist, and he used his early transaction analysis
Mhm.
very much with very disturbed people
Yes, yes.
because his thinking was that he wanted to enable people to have a more robust adult.
Mm.
And if he had taught them what he called transaction analysis proper,
Mm.
when people went to different parts of the ego states and how they trans back from different parts of themselves,
Mm.
their adults had more social control.
Yes, I mean it makes sense, but if I've done it and it's not the right time, the client gets lost, or I
Oh,
lose
and
the
see, I think
client.
that's different, Kelly. I think
Mm.
timing is crucial.
Yeah.
I was actually responding to your thinking
Mm.
about the more disturbed a client is, it
Yes.
might not be useful
Mm.
to.
Mm.
And that's why I responded that way about what Eric Berne said.
Yeah, yeah.
In terms of timing, I 100% agree
Mm.
with you. Absolutely. Timing is key
Mm.
to clinical treatment.
Mm. Yes, yeah. But Byrne would absolutely. So do you think he would get stuck into the theory quite quickly then, if even on a psychiatric ward?
Well, that's interesting because we're going back to 1960.
Mm.
I've worked on a psychiatric ward and been on ward rounds.
Mm.
And I don't think the psychiatrist really knew the people very well, by the way. He
Mm.
objectified them quite a lot. I learned a lot. It was way back in 1980s when I went on the site. It was a placement I did in my training.
Mm.
Um, but when I read the books, and it is the 1961 book where
Mm.
he's talking about how he works with this disturbed client and Mr. Q and different people. I got the sense that he'd built up a relationship with them
Ah, okay. Yeah.
before
Came
he,
first. Yeah.
yeah, I don't think he like gave them books of his books, here's my sort of early TA book or something. You've got to read all this. My sense of what he's talking about is that, and he didn't say this, so this is just my sense of, I suppose reading his first book was quite, I haven't got it in front of me, it's quite intimate. So it seemed to me that he built up a relationship first.
Mm.
And I guess he only taught ego states. I might be completely wrong.
Mm.
He doesn't talk about any other concept in the book.
Mm.
Um, I agree with you, though. You need to think clinically if you're going to work this particular way, because you're right. If you do it far too quickly and haven't learned their story or their
Mm.
script or their repetitive patterns, you might easily lose them.
Mm. Yeah. And I do wonder if maybe they might over adapt to us,
Well,
once
that takes us back to the expert bit that you're talking about.
yes, yeah.
And that is a real danger
Mm.
that you become some sort of idolized expert. And interestingly enough, of course, that is the one thing that Byrne really criticized psychoanalysis about.
Oh, okay.
And he wanted his new transaction analysis to be much more, at its heart, adult to adult.
Mm.
So that's why he emphasized over and over again the importance of contractual theory from an adult to adult position as a basis for treatment,
Mm. Yes,
not
yeah.
not from a parent-child position.
Mm. Yes, excellent point. Yeah.
See, they're very different philosophically.
Mm.
Psychoanalysis, certainly until the 1950s, was very much around. I mean, I know you had ego psychotherapy start off in the 1940s, so perhaps we have to go back a bit. But it's very much about Annis was the expert, and the method was through interpretation of free association that would provide insight. So
Mm.
they consciously took the expert position
Mm.
to cement the transfers anyway.
Yeah.
So Burns TA is a completely different philosophical position, which is about wanting to have an adult to adult base
Mm.
as the treatment, and therapists to move away from being an expert.
Mm.
Now, I know that in his early groups, he did teach ego states, well, basically transaction analysis proper. So that's interesting what you say. So it's a slight contradiction there, but
Yeah.
lots of his writings are contradictory. But I do think it's really important that we think about the implications of moving into that position.
Mm.
Different in a TA 101, you're a teacher.
Yes. And for the listeners who don't know what a TA 101
Oh,
is,
yeah,
it's
good
a
point.
wonderful 2-day course of an introduction to TA, basically. And we have to complete the 101 before we can start on the TA diploma. But they're really good and very good for self-awareness, like you were saying, like your friend was saying. So
Yeah,
highly
and
recommend it.
I've done loads and loads since 19, God, since a long time anyway. Perhaps I've done over, well, I've certainly done 100 101s. I've done many of them. And I would say, Kelly, say you had an average of about 10 people, which is maybe it's more, but we'll say 10 for the sake of this podcast. At least 5 or 6 of them would come for self-awareness. So the other 4 would come as a prerequisite to get on the course. I think it's a great 101 course for awareness. I did my first 101 in 1985 with Gordon Law, who's not here anymore. And that was for interest of self-awareness. It wasn't because I wanted to go on a TA course.
Oh, right. Yeah.
I didn't think he delivered it very well. It gave me some awareness. But I was very fond of Gordon. He was somebody who was part of my stimulus for going into transactional training. So I don't know how much awareness I got in relation to my friend who's had talked about what a profound change it.
Yeah, I've got friends, therapist friends in different modalities who've done it and really, really enjoyed it. So even if it's not your modality, there's a lot to be gained by it.
I think so, because it gives you an accessible language. It gives you lots of information to a different way of thinking. And I've been doing supervision certificate courses for the last 30 years. Therapists and counselors have come on, and invariably to almost every one of them have learned some basic TA.
Yeah.
I really agree with what you're saying about timing.
Yes, that was it. I've remembered. Yes. So it's that time, and I don't know if you have ever experienced that, but sometimes I have mistimed it or not quite. I've got the board out and the client has just disconnected, disconnected from the process. And I very quickly recognize that this client does not want any board work whatsoever.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think that's really important for us therapists to recognize that not all clients want the theory, not all clients want the whiteboard because
No.
that's a bit schooly.
Well, yes, and in object relations terms, you could argue that then becomes a potential of an object confusion. In other words, who is the therapist? Is she or he a teacher? Or she a therapist? So there's many reasons why you wouldn't do that. I found it useful. I found it particularly useful at the beginning of my therapy. I think as my therapy went on, less and less of psychosocial information. It was far more about the process. But I think it was just at the beginning where she taught me about ego states. And I did find that useful. But as I say, as the therapy went on, it was far more about process than content.
Yes. Yeah. And I do like it in couples work as well.
I think it's very useful in couples work.
And it provides a really good structure. And the couples have a thing to take away and practice, like strokes or ego states. But yeah, I do keep it very simple concepts, like you said before.
Yeah, one of the concepts I think couples like, and I haven't worked with a couple for a very long time compared to yourself, is in the idea of interlocking scripts.
Yes.
There's lots of things you can give homework about from TA concepts. So I agree with couples, they quite like the psychosocial information. It gives them an understanding of the relational patterns and confusion or their stuck places in the relationship. So I'm a great fan of TA with couples.
I kind of imagined that, some because I think we said on the last podcast, we imagined that there might be a split in the different ideas of what therapists do and don't do. Because I'm, in other schools of, so I'm thinking the person-centered approach, there wouldn't be any theory. It would purely be pure process.
Well, that's interesting. I think you're right per se as a general comment, but I was just thinking about immediacy as a concept. In other words, what's happening in the present at an immediate level, which might take you into giving some psycho information about whatever it is. But I think on a general level, on a general point you made there, yes.
mm,
Same with Gestalt psychotherapy.
mm. That they wouldn't give
Oh,
theory.
I think of my good friend now who's passed away a couple of
Mm,
years ago or a year and a half ago, Karen Burke, and what she'd say, because she's a Gestalt psychotherapist.
mm,
And I was just thinking, oh, she might say she would teach about contact and
mm,
interruptions to contact, which Gestalt is really famous for.
mm,
And she might teach about the usefulness of two chair techniques, which Gestalt is very famous for again.
mm,
But I think she would probably say, in general, um, we don't teach much in
mm,
do much educative theory and Gestalt. So, but stroke and in existential therapy, I think you probably might do, looking at the core belief systems. Psychoanalysis, you definitely wouldn't.
mm.
Psychodynamic therapy, if it follows the psychoanalysis path, probably not much, but they might teach about how the past affects the present. I think TA, I just got a lot of concepts and ego states. Perhaps there's more tendency, and especially in couples therapy, to teach TA.
Mm,
But
mm,
you are right, other disciplines, it might be an anathema to.
mm. I think in
Oh,
TA.
NLP would
Mm.
teach a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
Neuralistic programming would
Mm,
have a lot of teaching.
mm. I don't know about the other modalities, but certainly in TA we've got a lot of diagrams, haven't we?
Same as NLP.
Ah, okay. I don't know anything about NLP, if I'm honest.
Yeah, lots of diagrams.
But that makes it very easy because I'm quite a visual learner. So
Mm,
if someone's just kind of talking at me, sometimes I can't take it in, whereas I would take it more accessible to the
mm.
diagrams. So that's why we've got the whiteboard, really, isn't it? Because we're drawing stuff out.
Yeah, and another very, very, very popular modality, which is now the most popular modality in the NHS, is cognitive behavioral therapy.
Yeah,
Now, in CBT, you do a lot of educative social work
yeah,
in
yeah.
thought change, and you give people lots of homework.
They do lots of worksheets, I've heard.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I do encourage clients to journal. I'm not sure what you might think about that,
I
actually.
love journaling.
Oh, do you?
Love it.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
As long as they don't see it like homework.
Yes, yes. But I think that's a great space for them, for the client to be processing what's happening in between sessions.
Mm.
So they can feel like they're getting in touch with themselves, not just in the 50 minutes that they're in the session.
I think, yes, you're correct. And I think for them to think about and reflect upon on talking about unconscious process,
Mm,
which is what journaling is often,
mm,
is really
yeah.
important.
Mm. Some clients don't like it though, do they? They don't want to do that.
No, it's the same with what you said. If there's a disconnect,
Mm,
if
yeah.
they're going to put me in some sort of parent's ego state, which is a replication of their history,
Mm,
for some,
yeah.
for example, then it's not useful.
Yeah.
And they'll disconnect anyway.
Yeah. And then they won't do it. Yeah.
Mm. Mm.
Mm. Mm.
It's interesting to talk about this because it's, I know we'll probably come to the end of the podcast, but
Mm.
it leaves me thinking what I've always thinking about. Things are horses for courses.
Yes.
As
Yeah.
as long as long as you've got the clinical, heart, the clinical aspect of the client, service to the client at the heart of your actions,
Mm.
then you can't go far wrong.
Mm. Yes, and I'm always very clear from the beginning as well. Like, there's loads of theory and they don't have to have any of it. It's like, it's okay for the client to say, oh, I don't want to do that on the board, or I don't want to hear what you've got to say in a theory,
Yeah.
a new concept.
So if they say suddenly, and this has happened to me many times, by the way, perhaps near the ending, but I'll just say, oh, I'd like to buy TA today
Mm,
because I'd like to understand
mm.
what you're doing. So I'll say, well, it's fine. I mean, please do.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, in some aspects, that's a really good response from me.
Mm,
In other aspects, even though I'm not going to say don't buy TA, if the person is highly oppositional
mm,
and wants to use what they gain from the information of transaction analysis to make me not okay, we
mm.
then have another story.
Yes. Well, our job is, well, your job is harder than invite the client. But
Well,
sometimes,
of course, it'll all be grist to the mill because
yeah.
if they do that in the therapy room, they probably do that in life.
Mm,
So it is grist to the mill. It's just something to think about and to reflect upon, I think, when we think about, yes, it's okay for you to buy this, that, the other. I think it's really important people take ownership and self-agency of what they want to understand and not understand. It's just how it, I think it's important also to think about how it then might get played out in the therapy room negatively or positively.
mm. Well, that could be interpreted as being quite controlling and that they want to control the therapeutic process.
That absolutely. And
Mm,
it's really important that the therapist just thinks a little bit deeper what all these things might be about at a
mm,
psychological
mm.
level.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, why the client might want to control the session.
Yeah.
Yeah. Probably not for you, but that feels like extra energy for me. Like,
Oh, it's a lot of energy,
yeah.
and it's what they probably do in life.
Yes, yes, yeah.
So if you can use that
Mm,
to get back to what drives them
mm,
in life and in the therapy room, because they go together,
mm,
then you're onto a winner, actually.
yeah, so it's really rich fodder for
I
therapy.
think all that happens is it needs the therapist to think at deeper levels, though, rather than
Yeah.
just what's happening at the immediate level.
Yes. Yeah. And yeah, that's the skill of being a therapist, isn't it? With lots of experience,
Mm.
you're able to be analysing whilst we're
I'd always recommend people, therapists, counselors, anyway, people who perhaps even aren't therapists or counselors, to buy any of Yalom's books, Irvin Yalom's,
Oh
An
yeah,
Existential
lovely.
Psychotherapist.
Yeah.
His first book, which is many moons ago now, I think it was 89 or something like that, called uh, Love's Executioner, I think.
Mm,
And he takes, 8 or 9 of his clients and talks about them from what's really happening at a psychological level in
mm.
very, very accessible language.
Yes, yes.
And
They're a pleasure to read, aren't they? They're like it's like reading a novel.
I can't write that way. I wish I could. I was thinking of buying some more. I have all his books, but over the years, I don't know where half of them have gone. Um, but
They're
I
probably at the
might buy
Institute.
Executioner again because that first book is such a dream book for therapists and counselors to think about psychological processes. In
Mm.
other words, the content is far more, sorry, the process, he would say, and I would say as well, is I think more important than the content, really.
So just to tell the listeners again, that's Irvin Yalom and Love's
Yeah.
Executioner.
Yeah, and I think it's his first book of about 15.
Mm, yeah, I've
I
not
bought
read
it
all of them,
I
but
bought it about 1989.
yeah. Mm. Yeah, he's
He's 93
old now.
now.
Yeah, I was going to say he's really old now, isn't he?
He's
Yeah,
93,
yeah.
but one of the most wonderful existentialist psychotherapists and the most wonderful author of
Mhm.
talking about quite complex psychological processes in a very accessible manner.
Yeah, yeah. All hail Irvin Yalom.
Well, yeah, he was one of my biggest influences, actually.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. Well, that's, yeah. What a wonderful legacy to
Mm,
influence others.
mm, mm.
I think, are we done, Bob? Anything else
Yes,
you
I
wanted
think
to?
I could, you know what I'm like, I can talk on forever, but uh, I know we have to think when it goes past 30 minutes for YouTube sense and everything else. So, yeah, let's draw a line. And what's the one next week?
Next week is episode number 224, and should psychotherapy come with a health warning?
That's a good title, isn't it?
A great title.
I
I
look forward
know
to
my
talking
answer
about that.
immediately.
Well, I better not sort of respond to that because it would take us into another whole
The next one.
field. So I'll stop and say thank you for giving me a chance to talk about this subject matter because I think it's important and also it's really interesting talking
Yes, it
about
is. Yeah.
this whole process.
Yeah, yeah. I've enjoyed it too, Bob. Thank you for
Thank you.
talking to me about it. And I'll see you next time.
You will. Bye.
Take
Bye.
care. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to The Therapy Show, Behind Closed Doors podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. We'll be back next week with another episode.